ורעי למען אחי ורעי אתה בנה שלום לך.
Hello. Today we learning Parsha Noah, and I deliberately filmed a little bit of the clouds because it sort of reminds me about the flood, and which is what is the major part of this Parsha. So the year is 1536 as per Jewish calendar, means from creation of Adam, and which is 4,245 years ago, now is 5,781. God instructs Noah because he was the only righteous man in a world consumed by violence and corruption and immorality, and God instructs him to build a wooden teva, an ark, a ship, which we'll come to that. The size of the ship was quite significant. It was nearly like an aircraft carrier today. Still, we will discuss that in a few minutes. A great deluge, says God, will wipe out life from this planet, from the face of the earth. But the ark will float upon the waters, which will cover the whole planet, sheltering Noah and his three sons, and Noah's wife and his three sons' wives, so all the members of his family. And God says that you will take from each species two animals, male and female, a pair of each animal. The only exclusion are the kosher animals, which you will take 7 pairs of those for future sacrifices to God. So that basically in itself indicates that Noah actually learned Torah. He obviously knew what is kosher. So 120 years later, in this year, as I said, 1656, rain falls and underground springs open up. So the water was coming for 40 days from above and from below. And for 150 days the waters were, it was a stormy condition of the waters and across the whole planet. And it covered every mountain. And for 150 days the waters were swarming around the planet until they started to recede. The ark eventually settled on Mount Ararat, and from its window Noah dispatches first a raven, who is very unsuccessful, to identify whether there is dry land somewhere. And raven came back, and there are numerous explanations why raven came back. And then he says doves 3 times. Second time dove came over with the olive branch in his beak, and on the third time he never came back. So when the ground dries out, which was exactly 365 days solar year from the moment the flood started, God commands Noah to exit the ark and to start repopulating earth. Why Noah was waiting for a command from God? That's an interesting point, because Noah actually entered the ark with his family despite the God's command initially saying to him, go into the ark. But he entered the ark only when the waters already were coming up to here, so he had no choice and he entered the ark. So he didn't quite listen to God's command here. But on the other side, when he had to leave the ark, he was afraid. So he needed a little bit of prompting, and God, told him, get out, enough. Now Noah plants a vineyard. That is after a while, after he uh, built actually a sacrificial table and made sacrifices to God and prayed to God. And God gave him 7 Noahide laws, which we will come to that in a few minutes. And then he planted a vineyard. And sometime later, which some Midrash articles saying basically that probably 15 years later, he becomes drunk on the wine which he produced from the vineyard. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And Ham was the one who noticed that Noah got drunk, and he uncovered his private parts, and so he basically he saw his father's nakedness. Canaan, Ham's son, so Noah's grandson, Canaan, basically saw that first, and he informed his father, and the father went and had a look. And then there is a number of statements that Canaan actually did something terrible to Noah. Either he castrated him, there is one interpretation, or at least he sexually assaulted him somehow. I'm not going to judge here what did he do or say what he do definitely, but there are some thoughts about that. And that's why this is one of the main reasons why the Jews believe in and stated in the Torah that Noah has cursed Canaan. He said that all his descendants will be always slaves to the descendants of Shem and Japheth. By the way, to clarify it, descendants of Shem are the Semitic nations, which is Jews as well. And the descendants of Japheth are Greeks and the Christian nations. And Ham is the forefather of the Muslim nation to some degree. And because then Ishmael is considered the forefather of Islam. The descendants of Noah from all 3 sons for quite a while remain the same single people with the single language and the same culture, at least for 10 generations. And then they defy the Creator by building a great tower, Babel Tower. Yes, that's it. And the tower was supposed to symbolize their invincibility, their greatness, because they had a huge invention called brick. They invented the bricks, and they were firing them in the kilns and all of this, right? So they were thinking that now they're that powerful because they have got the brick. They can build a tower which will basically allow them to compete with God, with the spiritual world. Naturally, we understand how futile the whole idea is, but the idea was to unite all people together and keep them all together, concerned about one major project. It was the first dictatorship. Nimrod, their elected king, was a dictator, the first dictator, the dictator of humanity. And we have got plenty of those, we know, in future generations. So God can see that futile activity, comes down, looks at all of this, and confuses their languages. So instead of having one language, they get 70 languages. So one cannot understand the other, and they were forced to abandon that project. And they were dispersed across the whole planet in the 70 nations with their own cultures, languages, etc. And this is called the time of dispersion. Now, and Parsha Noah concludes with chronology of the 10 generations from Noah to Abraham, or to Abram initially, later Abraham, and the journey from his birthplace of Ur to Haran, Abraham's journey, on the way to the land of Canaan, which is basically the land of Israel. Now, I want, because every time in every parsha I'm trying to find something connecting to our time, something important which connects to our times. And there is nothing more important than the moral, psychological, and psychological imperative of what this parsha is all about. God, when they came out from the ark, God gave Noah and his family 7 Noahide laws, and they are traditionally enumerated as follows. First one, do not deny God. Second, do not blaspheme about God. 3, do not murder. 4, do not engage in incestuous, adulterous, or homosexual relationships. Do not steal, the 5th law. 6, do not eat of an alive animal. And 7, establish courts, legal system to ensure law and obedience. What does it mean? Why suddenly now, after this huge devastation, the planet was wiped out? Everything alive was wiped out. And now God gives these basic laws. Because God understood that the initial 10 generations from Adam to Noah, they lived incredible amount of time. Their years, I will show you now the diagram on the screen. You will see that Adam lived 930 years. Seth, Adam's third son, because Cain and Abel were the first 2 sons, which Cain killed Abel, as we discussed in previous week parsha. And Seth was the third son from which all descendants of humankind started, basically, went further. Enoch, so Seth lived for 912 years. Enoch for 905 years. The normal life expectancy of Enoch during Enoch times for people was 1,140 years. Canaan lived for 910 years, and the life expectancy was 1,235 years on average. Now, Mehalel lived for 895 years, Jared 962, Enoch only 365 years. And one of the reasons why Enoch lived such a relatively short period of time, when normal life expectancy during his generation was 987 years, is because he was the one who introduced idol worshipping really on a big scale. And during Enoch times, actually, there were warnings because tsunami waves attacked the places of living during his reign, during his generation, and that was a warning from God. After Noah, Shem lived only 600 years, Arphaxad 438, and then Salah 433, Eber 464, Peleg 239, Reu 239, Serug 239, Nahor 148, Terach, father of Abraham, 205, and Abraham lived for 175 years. As you can see, the life expectancy was coming down, and that was due to significant changes in the climate of Earth, the climate change. We're talking now about climate change. The Earth's axis has shifted during the flood. So before the flood, the Earth's axis was absolutely vertical, was going straight up, boom. Right now, and there was only one season, very nice subtropical spring summer kind of environment on the whole planet. But because the axis has shifted on an angle. Okay, I'm trying to move my hand, right? Okay, so we started experience seasons, which is winter, spring, summer, autumn, and the temperature is changing and the environment is changing. And this was one of the reasons why suddenly the life expectancy came down quite dramatically, actually, right? The other thing is the clouds were much denser, and the level of humidity was much higher on the planet before the flood. Anyway, when Noah came out and received those 7 Noahide laws which I just read, we need to understand that God realized that the generations before flood didn't understand what is right and what is wrong, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable. So it was the law of a jungle, survival of the fittest only, right? No morals, no understanding that helping somebody instead of killing him or beating him up is actually a good thing too for yourself. So this is why God decided to clarify those basic laws of morals to the people, to humanity. And the last law is very critical here, to establish the legal system, to ensure law obedience, to have police basically affirming and holding up the law, which is very critical today. Whenever you ask somebody, what is the purpose of your life? What you see is the most important aspect of your life. Majority of people will say, oh, to bring up my children, to bring them up as good people, to raise them and to bring up my children. Well, yeah, it's true. However, that is not the most important aspect of your life. Because as per the Torah, 7 Noahide laws, when you read them, what they telling you basically in very, very tight bullet points, that the purpose of your life is to build yourself as a moral, ethical person, to learn throughout your life, to learn to understand who you are, what you are, and how you need to achieve peace and harmony for people around you, for your family, starting with the family, and then for your community, for your towns, for your cities, for your countries, and the whole world. The whole purpose of our civilization is to go, that's why I'm wearing the t-shirt, to do this, from me to we to one. What is important is to understand that God wanted us, his creations, to understand that developing ourselves and becoming from aggressive, getting from aggressive, competitive society which we are today to an altruistic society which we should become, where helping somebody is more important than winning some bid or winning some money, or it's you or me and I winner and you are the loser mentality. And to get to one, that's another next step. But the most important thing is to understand that we are unfinished project. We are work in progress. Our development is not finished as species, as a civilization. And this is what this is all about. I want to finish with the words of Rabbi Jonathan Sachs from his book. By the way, all his books are the sources of my information. Most of what I know, I read in Rabbi Jonathan Sachs's books. And I wish him well, because he's very sick right now, and we all praying for him. But I want to finish with his words in the article, one of the 4 articles he covers the Parsha Noah. And he says as follows: fundamental moral truths that lie in the basis of God's covenant with humankind, that cooperation is as necessary as competition, that cooperation depends on trust, that trust requires justice, and that justice itself is incomplete without forgiveness. Morality is not simply what we choose it to be. It's a part of basic fabric of the universe, revealed to us by the universe's creator long ago. People, we need to understand that we must wear a mask because our morality tells us we have got no right to infect other people. And all of those anti-mask wearing demonstrations are absolute stupidity. And this is why in all countries today, in United States, Europe, Asia, there is the second or the third wave by now of the COVID-19. Because we still are work in progress, very far from the completion of the project. We still don't understand our responsibility for each other, for other people. Shabbat Shalom.
למען החי ורעי, למען החי ורעי, אדם בנה, אתה בנה, שלום לך, למען החי ורעי, למען